you're lucky maybe to one film a year back then. And if you're an actor, you want to work. Let's just put it down. That makes it easy.
Lee Majors was the $6 million man. Farrah was the most iconic face of the 1970s. Together, they were the golden couple that was until everything went south. At 86, Lee Majors finally broke his silence, revealing the emotional wreckage behind his picture-perfect marriage to Farrah Fawcett. It started with love, but ended in the most unexpected way. Why did Lee never forgive her? And what happened behind the cameras that the public never saw? Join us as we reveal how at 86, Lee Majors finally confirmed the devastating truth about Farrah Fawcett, the golden couple. For most of his life, Lee Majors kept most of his memories about Farrah Fawcett locked away, some too beautiful and some too painful. And now, as an 86-year-old man looking back on his life, Lee finally admits what he never said out loud.
John felt that I should complete my work on the laser in hiding. So it's all very official.
Well, Steve was sent from Washington.
Anyone who paid attention knows that Lee Majors and Farrah Fawcett were the couple everyone admired in the 1970s. Two successful people, while he was Colonel Steve Austin on the $6 Million Man, a stoic hero with superhuman strength and every kid's favorite action figure. Farrah was the stunning Texan blonde with what can easily be described as the most famous smile in the whole of America. To the general public, they were the very symbol of perfection. One could find their faces everywhere on magazine covers. They were frequently seen tightly holding hands on red carpets, and their love story seemed like it was custom-made. It was like an excellent Hollywood script, almost perfect in every sense. But what was the real story behind it? Away from all those flashing cameras and posed photos was a bond beginning to crack. It was in the late 1960s that Lee and Farrah met. Majors met actress Fawcett in 1968 through a publicist. When he arrived to pick her up on their first date, Fawcett recalled melting into 1,000 pieces. In her words, it was love at first sight, I guess. At that time, they were just two rising stars on very different paths. Lee, on one hand, had already found steady work in television with The Big Valley and always received praise for his charisma. Farrah, on the other hand, a Texas-born beauty queen, was just beginning her own journey in Los Angeles, catching attention with her sun-kissed hair and girl-next-door charm. Even though outsiders can't really say how the chemistry started, friends said that it was immediate. In terms of personalities, Lee was steady and reserved, while Farrah was full of life and optimism. They started dating, and they complemented each other perfectly, or so it seemed. They took their relationship a step further, solidifying it in marriage by 1973, and at least for the early period, everything was like a fairy tale. It was also at this time that Lee got the life-changing role as Steve Austin that catapulted him to the level of a TV superstar. Suddenly, he was everywhere. There was hardly a place you wouldn't see Lee. This was a major point in his career, and he'd never had it better. To add to that, he was boasting about his wife, Farrah, who was now moving away from commercials and modeling into serious acting work. He called her the love of his life, and the two of them were a reflection of that. Nice, isn't it? Well, not quite, because after the wedding, the bubble of the fairy tale disappeared and sent the supposed perfection into a downward spiral. Things began to change almost immediately as Lee worked grueling hours on the set of one of television's most physically demanding shows, and Farrah busy networking and auditioning and continuing to build her own brand. At this point, the demands of Hollywood began to pull them in opposite directions. And thus began the distance, a distance that was not only emotional, but actual. By nature, Lee was a traditional man. For him, it was dinner at home or time set aside for each other. He wanted connection and stability. But Farrah wasn't cut out for that. She was just discovering a whole new kind of ambition. She'd realized that she didn't just want to be the wife of a star, she wanted a career of her own. And while publicly, it appeared that there was a show of support from Lee, the reality behind the scenes was way more complicated than one would have done. Fame was starting to muddle their dynamic. By the 1970s, Farrah's career was blossoming in ways that she may not have imagined. Lee, still achieving prominence with the $6 million man, looked on with a mix of pride and unease at her gradual change. For he had been there when the world would know how fickle fame could be, how it could isolate, distort, and magnify even the most benign of personal differences. But Lee held on. He believed in marriage. He believed in her. He kept trying to work it out, trying to keep them grounded. But slowly, the very thing they had both worked so hard for, their careers, was becoming the thing that ripped them apart, and nothing was known. Their red carpet smiles remained. Their interviews were light, true, loving, and playful. Behind the emotional agony, there was an ever-expanding chasm, but in front of the cameras, they were still Hollywood's golden couple. But everything had gone wrong. How long will a marriage last when success becomes a third party? Let's find out when fame becomes a wedge. Farrah came to Hollywood with the aim of making a name for herself, and within only 2 weeks of arriving, she landed a modeling contract, immediately inundated with offers to star in TV commercials and print advertisements. Her plan to return to school fell by the wayside. Her success started when she debuted as former policewoman Jill Monroe in the hit TV series Charlie's Angels, also starring fellow beauties Kate Jackson and Jaclyn Smith. The Aaron Spelling drama premiered to high ratings. However, critics had a dimmer view, classifying Charlie's Angels as family-style porn and jiggle TV. During the show's first season, a poster of Farrah dressed in a seemingly innocent red bathing suit sold 12 million copies. The image, which catapulted her to superstardom, epitomized her perfect combination of girl-next-door innocence and blonde bombshell sexuality. Furthermore, the layered hairstyle that she sported became such an overwhelming trend with American women that a Farrah Fawcett shampoo was launched. Despite her overwhelming popularity, Farrah didn't return for the second season of Charlie's Angels. Spelling, who wielded a large amount of power in Hollywood, sued the actress for breach of contract. Faced with a $7 million lawsuit, Fawcett settled out of court by agreeing to make periodic guest appearances on the show over the next few years. She had finally made the name she wanted, independent of her husband's fame. For this reason, things didn't immediately get better as Lee had hoped. In 1976, Farrah Fawcett didn't just get her big break, she became a cultural phenomenon. No doubt, it was on the day that she debuted on Charlie's Angels that everything changed. She instantly went from a recognizable actress to an unforgettable one. Since the show was a huge success, Farrah quickly became its breakout star. Her face was everywhere, but no image captured her rise more than one single photograph. Farrah in that red one-piece swimsuit, hair windblown, smiling effortlessly. Little wonder it sold over 12 million copies and became the most iconic poster of the decade. Now, Farrah wasn't just a rising star anymore. She'd left that status of being an upcoming and become a symbol, the face of the 70s. And while millions of fans were captivated by her glow, the rapid ascent of her fame came at a cost, especially to her marriage. Lee Majors watched with helplessness as his wife changed right before his eyes at home. By then, he was a star for years because of the $6 million man, and he knew the grind of the industry. But nothing prepared him for the speed with which Farrah was rising and the volume of work that was being thrown at her. Suddenly, she was working every hour of the day. Commercial endorsements, magazine spreads, award shows, and fashion deals. It was once Lee who was the more famous one. Now, he was becoming Farrah's husband. One of the things Major has disclosed at 86 is that at one point during the height of her fame, he only saw Farrah 2 days a week. Even those moments felt snapshot-like, more business than pleasure, devoid of intimacy. It was not that Farrah had cooled. She was still warm and still kind. But that woman Lee had married, the grounded Texas girl with big dreams, was now someone else. Fame's machinery engulfed anything else. She had to perform, build her self-image, and keep moving. And once her grounding force, Lee was now a stranger, waiting on a slice of her time. For Lee, the hardest thing about fame was not fame itself. It was what fame stood for. The change in priorities and the loss of connectedness, that previously held bonds together, and perhaps most cruelly, he watched it happen in public. Every time he opened up a magazine or saw one of her commercials, there she was. She was always on the television, present but distant. The emotional distance was only the beginning, because Lee never saw the real betrayal coming. From the beginning, the press had a field day. First, Lee and Farrah were the golden couple who could do no wrong. Then, they became the couple who could do no right. They have had a pretty rocky road together. At the start, it all seemed so glamorous. But what was the breaking point, and what has Lee Majors revealed about Farrah Fawcett? The affair that broke him. When the late 1970s came, things had totally gone as far south as south goes. Lee Majors and Farrah Fawcett, the golden couple of Hollywood, were no longer living like husband and wife. Even though they were still legally married, their paths had diverged completely, like two separate orbits, spinning at different speeds. When it became clear that things weren't getting any better between them, Lee turned his attention to maintaining his TV stardom with the $6 Million Man, while Farrah was being swept into a global spotlight that few could survive, let alone navigate without collateral damage. Their emotional connection, which was once so vibrant, had withered into something distant and mechanical. It's not like they were fighting. They were simply no longer connecting. And then, it all imploded. But the final blow to Lee's didn't come from a fight or career misalignment. It came from a simple headline that was not so simple after all. The paper had many headlines, but only one caught Lee's attention. A single headline reporting that Farrah Fawcett had been seen with another man, Ryan O'Neal, and not just any man, for that matter. Ryan was a fellow actor, a major Hollywood name in his own right. In fact, not just a fellow actor, but someone Lee had once called a friend. Their circles had overlapped for years, but how could Lee have ever suspected that Ryan, his friend, would be the one to step into the wreckage of his marriage and wreck it even more? But it happened. And what's worse, Lee didn't even know immediately. The whole world found out before he did. Is there a better way to describe making a fool out of a person? When the news came out, evidence immediately followed as photos of Farrah and Ryan holding hands, smiling at public events, and walking arm in arm began pouring into magazines and tabloids. What was simply a personal crisis between Lee and his wife had now turned into entertainment for millions of people. To the rest of America, it was a juicy celebrity scandal. But to Lee, it was a betrayal that hit every nerve of his being. Friends say that Lee was completely blindsided. It wasn't simply infidelity, but public infidelity. The shame of seeing one's wife, still legally his partner, wrapped in another man's arms for the whole world to see, is not something anyone wants to feel. Even worse was the fact that some insiders speculated that the relationship with Ryan may have begun while Lee and Farrah were still attempting to sort things out between themselves. But that's always been a bit hazy in terms of timing. That ambiguity did nothing to lessen Lee's heartbreak, and it certainly didn't help when Ryan himself confirmed that Lee left Farrah in his care, and he kissed her until their lips were bloodied. When you think about it, it's even unforgivable that this was not some random stranger, not some unknown name. This was someone he had let into his world, a peer he had respected. In all this, not once did Farrah even refute it. Instead, she was seen even more frequently together with Ryan. Almost instantaneously, the press proclaimed them the latest it couple. They were having their good time, leaving behind a man who quietly tried to save his marriage, only to be publicly and unceremoniously replaced and humiliated in a way words can't describe. It's not out of place to say that for Lee, the sting wasn't just emotional, it was existential. That single situation turned everything he believed upside down. But he took the situation quite well, at least on the surface. He didn't lash out at life, nor did he write any memoir explaining to the world how he was betrayed, but his actions spoke louder than any public statement could as far as this matter was concerned. Lee withdrew completely. He stopped coming to all the events with Farrah. He stopped talking to the media about private matters, and eventually he stopped mentioning her altogether. Lee had been betrayed, in the worst way possible, by two people close to him, his wife and his friend. It made perfect sense that he withdrew. What about Farrah? She unashamedly moved on with Ryan O'Neal, whose relationship would become just as stormy as her marriage had been. They became newspaper regulars, with groans and moans recorded incessantly. But the one person who refused to participate in the drama was Lee Majors. He stayed silent, not because he didn't have anything to say, but sometimes the loudest grief doesn't speak. After the heartbreak, after the betrayal, and after the media circus that turned his private life into a public melodrama, Lee Majors disappeared from Farrah Fawcett's world entirely and deliberately. In a town built on headlines and exposés, his silence was rather radical, not what the move anyone expected. While others would have jumped at the chance to tell their side, to reclaim dignity, or simply to cash in on public curiosity, Lee did the opposite. He went quiet, and he stayed that way. Their divorce was finally concluded in 1982, nearly 9 years after their wedding. By then, Lee had already stepped away emotionally. He was done being a character in someone else's story. His focus shifted back to work. He took on roles in television movies and shows like The Fall Guy, which ran for several seasons and kept his name relevant. But behind the scenes, those close to him said he was never quite the same. And how could he? By the way, what happened after Farrah split from Majors? Watching her fade. In 2006, the world learned something heartbreaking. Farrah Fawcett had been diagnosed with a rare and aggressive form of cancer and began treatment that included chemotherapy and surgery. On February 2nd, 2007, on her 60th birthday, there was a report that Fawcett was cancer-free. But that wasn't really the case as the cancer recurred. And in May 2007, she was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer that had metastasized to her liver. A malignant polyp was found where she had been treated for the initial cancer. In early April 2009, the Age star was hospitalized after she returned to the United States. A month later, on May 7th, Farrah was reported to be critically ill, with Ryan O'Neal quoted as saying she was spending her days at home on an IV and often asleep. The Los Angeles Times reported that she was in the last stages of terminal cancer. Farrah documented her journey in raw, emotional video diaries that would later. Her decision to go public wasn't for sympathy, it was for honesty. She wanted to use her platform to show the reality of cancer, to educate, to strip away the illusions of fame and remind people that even icons bleed. Accolades flowed forth from fans as Farrah stood before the world. The one who was not present, however, was Majors. There were no sound bites or interviews. He had not been anywhere in public, not for a charity event, not for a word on air. When the documentary aired, Lee remained in the wings, mute and invisible when normally he would have been expected to appear. Not that he did not care. Nothing could be further from the truth. According to those who knew him best, he was following every report, every update, every single day from the moment she was diagnosed. But he did it quietly, so as to be unseen, shouldering the burden all alone. He had been hurt deeply, he would joke to friends. Her illness had reopened wounds. Wounds not of romance, but of emotion. The ability to say, "I love you," with the other part of him never turned completely to stone. Reaching out would mean stepping back into a space he had purposely exited. For years, silence had shielded him. And now in the midst of Farrah's final battle, he just couldn't find his way, or the strength to vault that emotional canyon. Not anger, but the opposite, fear at tearing down any shadow of the hard work to move on. After the split from Farrah and her subsequent passing, Lee found himself again. But how? More than one partners. After Farrah Fawcett's death in 2009, much of the world moved on. Her legacy was honored in retrospectives, her career examined through the lens of pop culture history, and her final battle remembered as a public act of courage. But for Lee Majors, the story didn't end with her passing. In many ways, it never truly ended at all. By the early 2000s, Lee had created a new chapter for himself. The world understood the romance between Majors and Farrah, but in spite of the love that blossomed between them to the point drawing the attention of the entire nation, Farrah wasn't actually Lee's first wife, or even his first love. Let's look at the relationships that led to Farrah. While he was still a student, he had married Kathy Robinson. Their son, named Lee, was born in 1962. The next year, Lee and his family moved to Los Angeles, California, where he got a job with the city's Department of Recreation and Parks. Soon after the move, his marriage experienced difficulties, and his wife and son went back to Kentucky. During and after their separation, Majors began dating actress Patty Chandler. Despite the end of their marriage, Majors and Robinson maintained an amicable relationship, with Robinson and Chandler even developing a friendship. They often spent time together, including shopping for Majors' son and sharing holiday meals. This harmonious dynamic allowed Majors to co-parent effectively and integrate his new partner into his family life. Lee actually acknowledged that their youth and lack of communication contributed to the dissolution of his first marriage. He noted that while they were in love, they weren't friends, and it wasn't until after their divorce that they developed a true understanding of each other. Lee Majors then got involved with Patty Chandler in a romantic relationship.
And don't get overconfident, because next week I'm going to use my big serve on you.
Oh, well, I wish you'd used it this week. It'd make the game a little more interesting.
During this period, their bond was characterized by a deep connection. Yet Majors exhibited hesitancy towards marriage, influenced by the emotional aftermath of his previous marriage to Kathy Robinson. This reluctance stemmed from his fear of repeating past mistakes and a desire to maintain personal freedom. Despite their close relationship, Lee's apprehensions about commitment led to the eventual dissolution of their romance after 3 years. Notably, during their time together, Patty developed a friendship with Lee's ex-wife, Kathy, and was fond of Lee's son, Lee Jr., often spending time together as a group. Their relationship also intersected professionally. Patty appeared in a 1967 episode of The Big Valley titled Plunder during the latter part of their relationship. In 1966, Lee Majors and Marianne Mobley, both rising stars from the South, began dating after meeting on the set of the movie Girl Happy, where Mobley starred alongside Elvis Presley. At the time, Majors was an aspiring actor, not having yet achieved significant fame. Their relationship blossomed, with Majors often taking Mobley on tours of his modest ranch in Malibu Canyon, reflecting their shared appreciation for simple, rustic living.
Dad got that in Alaska years ago. It was his favorite piece until I demanded to give it to me.
It's very nice.
However, their romance faced challenges. Majors was also seeing actress Patty Chandler during this period. On one occasion, he picked up Mobley for a date in Chandler's car, a gesture Mobley found discourteous. This incident led to a disagreement, and despite Majors' attempts to reconcile, Mobley decided to end their relationship, feeling that Majors' actions did not align with what she expected from a romantic partner. In the mid-1960s, Lee Majors and Sally Field had a friendly relationship marked by mutual admiration. Majors, known for his role in The Big Valley, was particularly fond of Field. Despite his interest and multiple attempts to arrange dates, their busy schedules consistently interfered, preventing any romantic development. A notable incident highlighting their dynamic occurred at California's Mammoth Mountain ski area. Field, seeking anonymity, attended the resort under the alias Gladys Simmons. Her cover was inadvertently blown when she encountered Majors, who greeted her by her real name, leading to increased attention from fellow guests. Later, an attempt to join a nightclub gathering resulted in Field being ejected due to age restrictions, an event exacerbated by Majors' well-intentioned but ill-timed humor.
Steve, about those improvements, what about it?
This series of events underscored the challenges they faced in pursuing a personal connection. Lee's third marriage was to former Playboy model Karen Velez. The couple have 3 children, daughter Nikki and twin boys, Dane and Trey, before they called it quits in 1924. He married his 4th wife, Faith Noel Cross, in 2002. Their enduring relationship began in December 1994, when they met at a dinner party in Florida, introduced by mutual friends. Despite a significant age difference, Lee was 55 and Cross was 20 at the time. They felt an immediate connection. Majors admitted he initially questioned the age gap, but was captivated by Cross's maturity and presence. Their first official date took place at the Super Bowl in 1995. an event they consider their anniversary. After 6 years of dating, Lee proposed during a Super Bowl party, presenting Cross with a 7.5-carat marquise diamond ring shaped like a football. The couple married in a quaint ceremony overlooking the Mediterranean Sea in Positano, Italy, which was attended by close family and friends. Throughout their marriage, Cross has been a transformative presence in Lee's life. Before meeting her, Lee described himself as an old man with a limp, feeling unhappy and indulging in excessive drinking.
Besides, he's got the best protection anybody could have.
You know, you're ruining my tennis.
He credits Faith with revitalizing his spirit and health, stating, "She transformed me into standing up straight and proud." The couple has maintained a strong bond over the years, often attending public events together and supporting each other's endeavors. They have resided in various locations, including Beverly Hills, Los Angeles, and Houston, Texas. Even though Farrah gave Lee a devastating blow, he still found peace with Faith Cross. Was there ever a Hollywood love story more dazzling and more heartbreaking than Lee Majors and Farrah Fawcett's? And now that Lee has finally spoken about their past, who do you think was really responsible? Share your thoughts with us in the comment section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.